Well, hi there. This is a death adder. And this is one of my favorite snakes because it is not what it seems. Death adders are front-fanged venomous snakes from Australia, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. Unlike all of the other front-fanged venomous snakes from Australia, death adders are stocky, slow-moving ambush predators with long, highly movable fangs that can fold when not in use and then extend forward during a strike. They give live birth. They have large, triangular heads and elliptical pupils. These are very different from the other front-fanged venomous snakes from Australia, which are primarily long, slender, active snakes with short, fixed fangs that lay eggs, have comparatively small heads and round pupils. In fact, in all of the other ways that we mentioned earlier, they are like adders and most other vipers. And yet, they aren't really adders. They aren't even vipers. But just like all of the other front-fanged Australian snakes, they're elapids. This means that the death adder is more closely related to coral snakes and cobras than it is to puff adders, European adders, or any other type of viper. But it is positively uncanny how viper-like the death adders are, except in their venom. That is one place where the death adder is nothing like most vipers, and very much like many other elapid snakes. Its venom seems to be entirely neurotoxic, so it isn't going to melt your flesh, just make your nervous system shut down. We'll talk more about that in a minute. We even have a whole video about how snake venom works if you're into that kind of thing. But right now, I think the question on all of our minds is the death adder a good pet? And is the death adder the best pet snake for you? So to answer this question, I've come down to Florida to visit my friend Chandler and his death adder to give them a score based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. Today's video is sponsored by Magic Spoon. This seems like it should be awesome, but I'm kind of a connoisseur of cereals myself, so if it doesn't actually taste delicious, I'm out. It won't be the sponsor of this video. So let's find out, and maybe we'll find out which one's my favorite flavor too, because I gotta try all of these. Fruity. Yeah. Smells good. It's got the colors I crave. That has no sugar. Those are like real things. Wow. That's good, actually. That's really good. This might be my new favorite fruity cereal. That was dang good. Round 2, frosted. That was really good, and the texture is excellent. One of the most delightful textures of any cereal I can ever remember eating. That smells great. Smells like something real. It's like I'm reliving my childhood, but with 0 grams of sugar. We got peanut butter and chocolate. Wow.
Whoa, slow down.
It's good, but it's not fruity good. They don't taste like they're trying to copy any other cereal. They're going their own direction, and it's really shockingly good. I wouldn't have predicted it. It's got lots of protein. All of them have been good. I'm gonna have another bowl of this when we're done. Cocoa it is. It's a little more the kind of bitter of dark chocolate. My first bite, I was a little surprised that it was kind of bitter. But then the more bites I had, the more I wanted more of it. I love this. This is great. These were honestly all really good. My favorite is the fruity. Definitely my favorite fruit cereal I've ever had, and I like fruit cereals generally. Never mind that it's 0 sugar. Like, these are awesome. Yes, you may sponsor this ad. Thank you so much, Magic Spoon, for making this video possible. Click the link below to grab a variety pack today so you can have your own test off, see if you agree with me or not. And be sure to use promo code CLINT at checkout to get $5 off any order. Or go to magicspoon.com/Clint. And probably the best thing is, I didn't know if I'd like this or not, but Magic Spoon has a 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it, they'll refund all your money, no questions asked. And you'll have gotten to try some really rad cereal. So click the link below or scan the QR code right here on the screen for $5 off. Or go to magicspoon.com/Clint to save $5 today. When it comes to handleability, I'm really torn on what score to give. What score do you give to what would be about the easiest snake in the world to handle, but that could kill you if you get bitten? Honestly, if this was a non-venomous snake, I would give them a 5. Most of the deadly snakes we have reviewed get a score between 0 and 1, but this is an easier snake to handle than any of the venomous snakes we have ever discussed. It is like handling the world's calmest ball python with a hook. It doesn't have the size of snakes like gaboon vipers. It is calmer than a rattlesnake. I'm gonna go with a 3. If you need to move a death adder, it's gonna be remarkably easy. They are so laid back. In fact, they're so laid back that it would be very easy to get extremely comfortable handling these snakes. I've seen people handle them in ways that seem outright insane to me. But the snakes, generally speaking, won't make you pay, but they can. The death adder has the fastest strike of any Australian snake. And with fangs able to move like those of a viper, you are very much more likely to end up with those fangs entering your body than is the case with most other elapids. Though in the wild, a large percentage of all bites from death adders are dry bites. And the majority are the result of mistaken identity, as these snakes look remarkably like blue-tongued skinks, especially when they're down in the leaf litter. Though it is also easy to step on, or at least too close to one, as they are very well camouflaged. And it is an interesting aside that one or both of these factors are probably responsible for the coloration and perhaps the head shape of blue-tongued skinks. The real question, and one that perhaps we could investigate in the future, is, which is it? Is it the case that the blue tongue is a mimic of the death adder because predators avoid death adders? Or do they look similar because that camouflage works well in the environment where they both live? Is it a little of each? What do you think? Are you into that kind of thing? Anyway, back to that bite. If you should get yourself bitten by a death adder, you're going to have a real problem. Some reports say that before the advent of death adder antivenom, more than half of people envenomated died. Now we have antivenom, but do they have it at a hospital or zoo anywhere near where you live? Let's talk about what that venom does, shall we? We already mentioned that it is almost purely neurotoxic. This means that it isn't going to break down your flesh, but that doesn't mean that it isn't going to kill you. The black mamba's venom is almost purely neurotoxic too. That won't save you. And this bite acts a great deal like a black mamba bite, but potentially not as bad. It's like black mamba light. You're not likely to have much swelling or pain at the bite site. Honestly, symptoms may take a while to develop. So you might not know if you've been envenomated until your eyes start to go all Katy Perry, your vision gets blurry, you forget how to swallow or keep your saliva in your mouth, your muscles start twitching and your palms get sweaty, your knees become weak, your arms heavy, there may be vomit on your sweater already, which may or may not be mom's spaghetti. And you better hope you're at a hospital already, because dogs with these symptoms are usually dead within 20 minutes. Usually due to respiratory failure. And it can become more severe if you've been bitten by death adders before. So while these may not be true adders, the probability of death from a bite is additive. But the good news is that you could easily keep and handle these snakes for decades without ever needing to touch one. They're very easy to handle with a hook. Just scoop under them at approximately center mass and they seem happy to just go for a ride. So I'm sticking with 3. Which seems crazy, but here we are. When it comes to care, we give the death adder a score of 4 out of 5, which is high. This snake is actually going to end up looking like a good pet. And for a snake that could kill you dead in relatively short order, I guess it is. I don't want to give the impression that this is a great idea though, but care is pretty easy for these guys. And I'm going to turn the time over to Chandler, who actually keeps this death adder, to take you guys through it in some detail. But one warning that I want to give is that you need to avoid becoming complacent and reckless with these snakes. You are going to need to get into the enclosure to clean, fill water bowls, etc. There are safe ways to do this, and there are ways that probably won't end up with you at the hospital or a morgue, but they could. And it would be up to the snake to decide where you go. And most of the time, they will not do a darn thing, which can embolden you to keep taking shortcuts. Don't. The key when working with dangerous animals of any kind is to never, not for 1 second, forget what could happen. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Chandler.
So the death adder is found mainly in Australia, a dry, arid environment, the outback. rocky escarpments, super dry. So in captivity, you'd keep them on rocks or sand or something like aspen to make sure they're nice and dry. You don't want to keep them too humid. That being said, a more common death adder in the trade of venomous snake keeping or in zoological places would be the Papuan death adder, which actually handles humidity much better being in a tropical environment like Papua New Guinea. So the snakes like to be kept dry for the most part. They eat about once a week. Mainly in the wild, they're lizard eaters, but they're great on rodents in captivity. It's not really a big difference for them, and they handle it well. These snakes are great feeders, and what makes them very dangerous when cleaning out their enclosure is they have an insane feeding response like most venomous snakes, or snakes in general. So when you open the cage, they think food's coming, and they immediately start striking out. And this is the fastest striking snake on the planet. So you fall into a false lull like Clint was saying, and you think, I'm just going to reach in and grab that water bowl. That snake's going to think you got food, strike out, and pump you full of venom because it's got a feeding response. It thinks it's getting food. So now it's dumping in a real dose of venom. And this is in the top 8 most venomous snakes on the planet. You better believe if you get bit, you're getting sent off into another world. It is said that the bite from a death adder is similar to an acid trip, that you can actually feel euphoric. You're going outside your own body. And some people have even complained about getting anti-venom and being taken out of that trip. It's a bit silly, I think. A snake like this doesn't need a massive enclosure because most of the time it's an ambush predator and doesn't move much like a gaboon viper or a rhino viper or a puff adder. Even though he's not an adder, like I said, they are sit-and-wait predators, camouflage, ambush predators. They don't exert a lot of energy. They're not like king cobras and mambas moving all over the place with fast metabolisms. These snakes just sit in one spot for the most part. So you could literally just have it in a terrarium the size of this table, and it could live in this for the rest of its life. But that being said, this is a death adder. It's a highly venomous snake. In the top 8 most venomous snakes on the planet, this is not a pet. This is not something to be kept in someone's house. If you were to keep one of these snakes, I highly suggest that you go to a zoo and work with them for a very long time and get mentored by a professional and have a good reason to even have these snakes. Good reasoning would be educational use, venom research, but definitely not something to show off in your living room. Death adders do not make good pets. No venomous snakes do.
Thank you, Chandler. And remember, if you don't already subscribe to Chandler's Wildlife, I don't know what you're doing with your life. It's awesome, right? He's talking about some of the most incredible animals in the world and doing a lot for the conservation and preservation of these species. So you've definitely got to check it out. When it comes to hardiness, we give the death adder a score of 5 out of 5. If you get one of the Australian species, it will almost certainly be captive bred. If it is one of the Indonesian death adders, there is some chance that it could be wild caught. And then I would not go 5 out of 5. But the overwhelming majority of death adders available, especially babies, are captive bred. They seem to be very hardy snakes. Given proper care, it should live well over a decade. When it comes to availability, we give the death adder a score of 1 out of 5. Outside of Australia and the range of the death adder, this is just not going to be one of the easier deadly snakes to get. If you're seeing these at pet shops, please let me know what pet shops, and I would probably like to check that out. Expos that allow venomous reptiles might have them, but generally your best bet will be to find a breeder directly. There are a few, but it isn't like getting a ball python. And thank goodness for that. Man, I'm getting so sick of seeing table after table of death adders at this expo. Why is nobody working with anything else? Though this is probably the closest thing that you're going to find to a ball python in the Elapidae. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the death adder a score of 4 out of 5. Honestly, the biggest expense might just be getting licensed to keep deadly venomous snakes. The cost of the snake, the enclosure, heat tape, thermostat, hides, etc. is going to be pretty normal for a snake. You want to be sure to have a couple of good hooks, but this really isn't a very expensive snake up front. Of course, it could cost you your life. And if you're bitten, don't expect your hospital stay to be highly inexpensive. But bites are very avoidable with this snake. Just strangely, their calm demeanor may end up being the reason that you get yourself bitten eventually. It's just easy to get overconfident with a death adder. But that is why overall we give the death adder a score of 3.0 out of 5. I'll wager that's the highest score that we will ever give to an elapid snake, though there are a few vipers that might come close. And this basically is a viper. just not technically. If what you want is a super cool snake that looks remarkably like a viper, but isn't, we'll try to make a video about viper boas soon. But if what you want is a super cool snake that looks remarkably like a viper, but isn't, but could still kill you dead, well, the death adder is probably the best pet snake for you. But still, I wouldn't recommend it. And don't get complacent. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. Such a difficult snake to deal with. Your palms get sweaty and your knees... Jason, you're already reading that. Okay, let's start over. Yep. Your muscles start twitching and your palms get sweaty. Your knees become weak, your arms heavy. There may be vomit on your sweater already, which may or may not be mom's spaghetti.